Okay, so now we're going to move on to multiplying and dividing fractions. Okay, so now we have 1/2 times 2 3/4, which right here, this is a mixed number. Now, if you're multiplying mixed numbers, the first thing you need to do is you need to turn that mixed number into an improper fraction. And there are two ways of doing this. So, one way to do it is to draw out a picture. And so, I know that my piece, so draw out a picture that has the pieces that are 4, whatever the denominator is. That's how much you're going to break apart your whole. That's how many pieces are going to make up your whole. So here, I know it sounds confusing, but so here you go. So if you draw out your circle, and I'm drawing out 4 pieces because that's how many pieces we have that will make one whole. Okay, so and then from there I have to fill in the 4 because I know I'm gonna have 2 wholes here. Okay, and then I need to draw out one more because I need to shade in for 3. And then from there, all I gotta do is count how many pieces that I need to shade in, how many parts that I have to shade in to make my whole. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that's going to be 11 parts over 4 because that's how many parts are making up my whole. Okay, so and another way to turn this mixed numbers into an improper fraction is by multiplying the denominator. So multiplying the denominator and the whole number and adding the numerator. So 2 times 4 is 8. So 8 plus 3, which equals 11, and then just use the same denominator, which again is going to be 11/4. So whichever way you prefer doing it, if you like to do it, draw out the picture to figure out your improper fraction, or if you like to use the method of just multiplying the denominator and the whole number plus the numerator and then using that as your numerator and using the same denominator, whichever way you prefer doing it, that is totally fine. So let me explain this one more time so you can see it, and it's kind of small here. So if I write out 2 3/4, if I multiply 2 times 4, which equals 8, and then add 3, that will be 11. So 2 times 4, 8 plus 3, 11, and then just use the same denominator. Okay, so now that we've figured out the improper fraction, the equivalent improper fraction to this mixed number, we can now move on to multiplying it. So 1/2 times 11/4. And I love multiplying fractions because it's really easy. All you have to do is just multiply across. You don't have to do any extra work. You literally just multiply the numerators together, and that's your numerator, and you multiply the denominators, and that's your denominator. So 1 times 11 is 11, and 2 times 4 is 8. And now we have an improper fraction, and I will tell you this now, in your SBAC, you are expected to simplify all of your answers unless told not to, but they usually will remind you to simplify your answer. But this is an improper fraction. It needs to be simplified. So there are 2 ways of doing this. Just like there's 2 ways of turning a mixed number into an improper fraction, there are 2 ways of turning this improper fraction into a mixed number. So we can draw it out. So if I draw out my circle and cut it up into 8 pieces because that's how many parts are going to make my whole. So then I just have to shade those all in because I know there's at least going to be 8 that are going to be accounted for. But I need to reach up to 11. So I have 8 pieces shaded in, 9, 10, 11. So I know that I have 1 whole here and then 3 out of 8. So that's my mixed number. Another way of doing this is just divide. 8 divided by 11. 8 goes into 11 one time. 1 times 8. 11 minus 8 is 3. Take this remainder as your numerator and take this same denominator. And it's the same thing. So our answer for 1/2 times 2 3/4 is equal to 1 3/8. That is our answer. Okay, so now we know how to multiply our fractions. Let's move on to a word problem where we'll see if we either need to multiply or if we need to divide. Okay, so 1 serving of tortilla soup at a restaurant, so I'm just gonna insert there, say at a restaurant, is 1 2/3 cups. So that's 1 serving of tortilla soup at a restaurant. So this particular restaurant is only serves 1 2/3 cups of soup for 1 serving. A restaurant cook makes 50 cups of soup. Okay, so he specifically makes 50 cups of soup for 1 day. Is there enough to serve 35 people if he makes 50 cups of soup? Okay, so in order to figure out if there's enough to serve 35 people, we need to figure out, okay, so we have 50 cups of soup. And remember, when you have a word problem and there's a lot of information going on, figure out what is important. Okay, so we have 50 cups of soup, and each cup of soup is a serving of 1 2/3 cups. Okay, and the cook made 50 cups of soup. Okay, is there enough to serve 35 people? So in order to figure out how many servings because each person gets 1 serving. So to figure out if we have enough to serve 35 people, we need to divide 50 cups by 1 2/3 cups, because if that's the amount of soup that we have and this is the amount that goes to each person, if we divide these, we'll figure out how many servings we can yield from 50 cups of soup. So we need to divide 50 by 1 2/3 to find the number of available servings. Okay, so 50 divided by 1 2/3. Okay, so we already see that there is a mixed number here, so we need to turn that into our improper fraction. So we have 50, and I'm also going to put 50 over 1, because if you see a whole number there, just put it over 1. We already know that if you're dividing or multiplying or adding and subtracting any whole number, it's always going to be over 1. That's going to be the denominator on the bottom. Okay, and we're dividing it by, okay, so let's do our improper fraction. So I'm going to do it the short way of turning our mixed number into our improper fraction by just multiplying 3 times 1 plus 2, which equals 5, and using the same denominator. Okay, so 3, I'll say that again. It was 3 times 1 plus 2, so 3 times 1 is 3, plus 2 is 5, and then I just use the same denominator. That's how you turn your mixed number into an improper fraction. Okay, so now we are ready to divide. And division, also very easy to do with fractions, because all you need to do is you take your expression and you just need to take the second fraction and you gotta flip it to get the reciprocal, and you're just going to multiply the reciprocal. So if you flip this, you flip the numerator, the denominator will go to the top and the denominator will go to the bottom. They'll switch places, so they're gonna be flipped. You're gonna flip 5/3 and it will become 3/5. Okay, that's our reciprocal. And then once we figure that out, once we flip those that fraction, we just multiply across. So 50 times 3 is 150, and 5 times 1 is 5. Okay, so now we have 150 over 5. Remember that fraction bar also means division, so we're going to divide 150 by 5. 5 goes into 15 3 times. 5 times 3 is 15. Bring down the 0. 5 goes into 0 times. So 50 cups of soup only serves 30 people. So is it enough to serve 35 people? No, it is not. 50 cups of soup only serves 30 people. If we're going to be serving 1 2/3 cups per serving, it can only serve 30 people.